Let there be football. Welcome to Move the Chains. I'm your host, Jonathan Bam Rivers. On the MTC call sheet today, I'm going to give you my Week 5 takeaways from college football. Last weekend in the NFL and in college football were phenomenal games, phenomenal performances. So I just want to give you my takeaways from the landscape of the college game. When it comes to the Chain Gang Chatter, we're going to go make it or fake it. So I'm going to switch it up a little bit, not necessarily go questions from social media, but tell you what teams in the NFL I think are making it a possible run into the playoffs and who may be faking it, which means I don't think they're playoff contenders this year. And in my nonsense narrative, I want you to understand that style of play matters. And to a lot of people, they think that you have to win a certain way. And that's what I mean when I say that's a nonsense narrative, because winning is the most important thing. However, there are many people out there that think a team should win a certain way. And in my estimation, that's just not true. And then also, quarterback position is the most important position on the field. But I think that the backup quarterback, a lot of times, is the second most important position on the field, and it's a lot of times underrated. All that and more right here on Move the Chains. But you know how we do it. Let's kick it off with the opening toss. All right, so I had a conversation with my producer before the games were even played last week. I always have conversations with my producer about college football and my director about the NFL because they're both gurus and love each sports. And, of course, that's why it's a great dynamic because I love them both. So I want to talk about Alabama first when it comes to my first college football takeaway from Week 5. And all I'll say about Alabama is that they're an incomplete contender. So when I say this, you may hear it as a slap in the face because you may think I'm just saying, well, Alabama's an incomplete team. No, they are incomplete, I think, just like everybody else after 5 weeks in college football. But you need to listen to the operative word in this statement, in my estimation, that's contender. I watched this game against Georgia, then I thought back to the way they played against Florida State, and I thought about the games in between. I looked at Alabama and I said, man, I watched this football game having picked Georgia and not apologizing for it because I said Georgia runs the football well. They win this football game because Alabama may not be able to stop the run, which means that it will also permeate into the way Alabama has to run their offense in a complementary game style. Georgia ran for over 200 yards, and Alabama, in my estimation, still controlled the game. So all that told me was Alabama is a team that has not played anywhere near their ceiling, and yet I still think they're a championship contender. I look at Ty Simpson. First of all, I've said Jeremy Bernard is the best receiver on this team, period. I think Ryan Williams is a freak athlete, but he's nowhere near the receiver that Jeremy Bernard is. But I also think about the offensive line and Jam Miller and the presence that they had. And I don't mean the presence as if they were dynamic in running the football. They were good, but they were great in their desire to not give up on the run. That's where I saw this team. And this team's rush defense, like I just said, needs improvement. Some people may think that schematically they need to improve. Some people may think that there are some players that are out of position, but that's what Kane Womack has to decide. That's what Kalen DeBoer has to decide. All I'm telling you is Alabama is a team that is continuing to grow. And as we look forward to the game against Vanderbilt later today, this is what I want to say. I don't think a loss to Vanderbilt is important because it's a loss to Vanderbilt, even though we know that Vanderbilt beat Alabama last year. A loss is important here because it means that they already have 2 losses, regardless of the team. Okay? Remember when Notre Dame lost to Northern Illinois at home last year? Then they went on to not lose another game until the national championship game. So nobody was talking about the Northern Illinois loss, but it would have been louder throughout the season if they had already had a loss. So that's my thing with Alabama. I'm not sitting here telling you I think they'll be undefeated the rest of the season. They have the ceiling to do it. I just know that from what I saw against Georgia, this team was nowhere near their A game. If you combine the drops, if you combine some of the missed assignments defensively, if you combine some of the gashes they were giving up in the run game, and yet they were still beat one of the best teams in the SEC and in the country on the road. And I think Alabama had a formidable plan offensively. I think they were very sound in special teams. And that's why I'm looking at them and saying, man, they are an incomplete contender for a championship. And I think that's one of the biggest praises I can give any team right now. All right, my second takeaway, honestly, Georgia Tech has my attention. And this is what I mean by that. I'm not telling you Georgia Tech's going to win the ACC, although they could. I think Miami's the best team in the ACC, and I think Florida State's a close second. Of course, they match up later today as well. I look at Georgia Tech, and I want to take you to the NFL for a comparison. Do you remember when the Detroit Lions in their second season under Dan Campbell went to Green Bay in the last game of the season and they beat the Packers? They didn't make the playoffs, the Lions didn't. But it was a springboard to what they did the following season, making the NFC Championship game, and now last season them being in the playoffs again, winning the division and who they are. I remember when Georgia Tech lost to Georgia last year in 8 overtimes, and they didn't win the football game. But I told people, I said, Brent Keys is doing something at Georgia Tech. Now, it's about player and personnel development and execution as well. Because Haynes Kingsley went out to get Malachi Hosley from Penn, a very good running back who's not even the star of this offense, which I think he will be next year. I just look at this, and I think from a development standpoint, Georgia Tech going on the road and beating Wake Forest, to me, is one of the biggest wins of the season. You may say, are you kidding me? First of all, they weren't ranked. Second of all, Georgia Tech was getting their butts whooped. Correct. Georgia Tech did not play their best game, but I think they competed their best game. Because that, to me, shows me the signs of a program that may be on the upward trajectory. And I'm going to give you a comparison, because both of these teams I'm about to compare both beat Clemson this year. This has nothing to do with Clemson. They are disappointing in terms of what they have been for different reasons. I'll talk about that another day. Georgia Tech and Syracuse both beat Clemson, right? Georgia Tech goes on the road and is down to a team that they should be beating in Wake Forest, but yet they find a way to win down 3 scores. Syracuse subsequently is able to beat Clemson and then gets railroaded by Duke at home. That's what I mean when I say progression of a program. So Georgia Tech has my attention. They're in the top 20 right now. Where they end up, I have no idea. They may not even make the playoff, but I'm just saying Brent Keys, in terms of 2 7-6 seasons and now building on a 5-0 start, you see a program going in the right direction. I say this all the time. There are programs that allow their coaches to build programs. And these are generally the programs that don't have national championship expectations until they become contenders in a lot of people's minds. Georgia Tech is in that vein right now. And I think this is where they should be, and I think Brent Keys wouldn't want it any other way. All right, my next takeaway, I think Oregon is simply the Big Ten's best. And I want to say, basically, this is flipping the script. You remember last year, Oregon was ranked number 1 throughout the duration of the season. And Ohio State started to show themselves to not only be the best team in the Big Ten, but the best team in the country by winning a national championship. And that's even with losing to Oregon last year as Ohio State. Now, they don't play this year, but as I look at Oregon, and especially after the Penn State game, I just don't think there's nothing that this team doesn't do well. I think they run the football exceptionally well, averaging over 6 yards a carry. I think Dante Moore, along with Ty Simpson, are 2 of the best quarterbacks in all of college football, especially from a dual threat aspect. And I just think Dan Lanning is a coach who understands his team. And now let's not overlook Bo Nix, Dylan Gabriel, and Dante Moore. And this is what I meant when I said about Clemson. I'm so shocked at Clemson this year because they have experience coming back and they're struggling because I just don't think they're competing the way that they thought they would. I think there's a lack of confidence there in Clemson and Death Valley. But with Oregon, does Dan Lanning ever lack confidence? It doesn't matter that they've had 3 different quarterbacks in the era of the transfer portal or quote-unquote baby free agency, the way I look at it in terms of the next NFL and college. 3 different quarterbacks, all different, but yet the result's still the same. Oregon is still one of the best teams in the country, and they're solidifying themselves, to me, as the best team in the Big Ten. Going on the road and beating Penn State means something to me because I don't think Penn State is anything less than formidable. I think they're a very good team. I think Penn State will be in the national championship hunt this year. And I know James Franklin hasn't won big games. This is one of the reasons why I thought Oregon would win this game. But I'm telling you that I don't look at Penn State and says, here we go again. I'm looking at Oregon and saying they're just that good. And I think it's just going to continue to get better for the team, in my estimation, that's best in the Big Ten right now. And my last takeaway, don't let Ole Miss fool you, man. And this is not me saying Ole Miss isn't a good team or a good program. This is not me saying Lane Kiffin is not a good coach. This is me confirming to you that I think Ole Miss is just a good program, and Ole Miss is just a good program, and Lane Kiffin is just a good coach. I think back to 2022 where they started 8-1 and lost 3 straight games. I think back to last year where they lost a game to Kentucky that they shouldn't have, in my estimation. If you looked at the game and if you looked at the talent on the field, which we know talent doesn't mean everything, they lost to Kentucky. Then they come back and beat the brakes off the best team in the SEC last year in Georgia by 3 touchdowns, and then subsequently lose to Florida. Those are the things that I mean when I say Lane Kiffin is good and this program is good. But there are a majority of teams in college football, ladies and gentlemen, that are average to good. There are a small percentage of teams that are elite, and that's okay. And it's okay that Ole Miss is not an elite program right now. They're trying to get there, but don't let Ole Miss fool you. Until they show me that they cannot stumble down the road and down the remaining of the season, I'm still going to think they're just good because that's who they've been. All right, when we come back from the break, make it or fake it in the NFL. What teams do I think are true contenders for a playoff spot, and what teams do I think are just faking their way through? Back when we'll move the chains, right after this. And welcome back in to Move the Chains. Before we get to the Chain Gang chatter, I want to take this opportunity, as always, to thank my Lord and Savior Jesus Christ for hosting Move the Chains. Secondly, I want to thank all you, the fans, whether you watch on social media, the Sports Leader, WXTX, Fox 54 on YouTube. Thank you for your support and the love. Also, to the best production crew in the business, back in the studio this week from Hawaii last week, they never miss a beat. And of course, I want to let everybody know, you see the QR code at the bottom of the screen. If you're struggling mentally, financially, spiritually, or physically, and you want to be better in your life, scan that QR code. Having said all that, you know what time it is. It's time for the Chain Gang chatter. All right, so something a little different with the Chain Gang chatter today. Rather than answering social media questions, I want to do a little segment called Make It or Fake It. And I'm simply saying, do I think these teams are in position to possibly make it to the playoffs, or are they faking themselves in a position where they're not that good? All right. First team I want to talk about are the Indianapolis Colts. I think this is a resounding make it. I think even after the loss to the LA Rams, in which a game that's A.D. Mitchell, we understand what happened. This is a team that can run the football. This is a team that plays complementary defense. And this is the team in Daniel Jones who has a quarterback that's athletic enough and can make plays enough in the passing game to where he doesn't have to be phenomenal. And I said this before the season. This is a team that doesn't get the credit because of the market they're in and because they're not winning. They have very good players. Zaire Franklin, Michael Pittman Jr., Jonathan Taylor. That offensive line is good. So Indianapolis is a team that is in the make it category, and I think they're in prime position right now to win the AFC South because even though the Jaguars are 3-1, I just don't trust them. They're going to have to prove me wrong. The next team is the San Francisco 49ers. Did you see the Thursday night game? I'm not even going to harp on that because that was phenomenal with all the injuries they had, but the 49ers and the Chargers are both 3-0 in their division. I think other than the Bills, they're the only teams that are undefeated in their division. 3-0 against all of their division opponents. And the 49ers, I will repeat, guys, I think they're a make it here. They will be in the playoffs, but I do not think they're a championship level team. Let me say that. I think the ceiling for this team could be possibly a divisional round game. So if they go beyond that, I'd be shocked. But they're good. This is why Kyle Shanahan went and got Mac Jones in the offseason to be the backup, something nobody talked about, or not a lot of people, because remember when he was coming out of Alabama, a lot of people thought he was going to draft Mac Jones for this reason. Brock Purdy's injured. Mac Jones fits the style Kyle Shanahan wants to play. You've also got guys like Fred Warner. That's the reason this team is where they are, and they are make it. Next, the Dallas Cowboys. I'm going to say fake it just because I don't believe in their defense. But I do believe, again, I told you the Micah Parsons trade was good for Green Bay in the now, good for Dallas in the future because they weren't a contender with Micah anyway, but now they have an opportunity to get draft picks, regardless if they're late first round or not. Dallas has drafted well. But this year, they will put up points. They will be better than a lot of people expected. I've got them finishing no higher than third in the NFC East. Now, if Jane Daniels is not healthy, maybe they get to that 2 spot in the East. They'll be contending at the end for a playoff spot, but I don't think Dallas is a playoff team. But I think they're buying time for the future. The question is, can they marry their immediate future and getting better defensively with the timeline of their quarterback because he is north of 30 years old? The Atlanta Falcons are also, and this is the toughest team for me, I'm going to say fake it now, but this is not me saying that Atlanta can't make the playoffs. I'm just saying I think the landscape of the NFC has them maybe on the outside looking at. I can easily see them in week 16 or 17 being in the fight for a playoff spot and just coming up short because the NFC North is just that good. And now the NFC West, unexpectedly, in a lot of people's minds, is better as well. So that's where I have the Falcons as a fake it, but please know that they're a good team on the rise. And lastly, the Denver Broncos are a make it. I think their ability to play high-level defense, even though Bo Nix has struggled this year, I don't think this team wins the division this year. I think they'll be a 6 or a 7 seed like they were last year, and I think they're going to continue to grow like the Houston Texans were trying to do in the previous 2 seasons. So the Broncos with Sean Payton and Bo Nix are a make it. They're just not a championship contender like some people think they are. When we come back from the break, my nonsense narrative, which is my favorite segment of the show, I'm going to tell you why people say style matters in the NFL and why winning matters more. Back with my favorite segment right after this. And welcome back to Move the Chains. Now it's time for my favorite segment of the show. It's time for my nonsense narrative. Run it! So the next man up mentality does mean something because you can't quit. Style matters in the NFL. And by style of play, I simply mean having an identity matters, okay? So don't get that twisted. What I'm saying is people say you have to win, but you have to win a certain way. That's when I say style of play matters as a nonsense narrative. There's no one way to win in the NFL. Now, if you can run the football and play defense, that's what we say travels in the NFL. That's why that's good. But you've seen teams who play different styles do it differently. Like Buffalo is a team that can run the football, but Josh Allen can make down-the-field throws. That's why Buffalo wins. Okay, you've seen the Chargers be in a position they want to run the ball first as well, but they've been heavy in their play-action game. The Philadelphia Eagles are putrid right now in throwing the football, but yet they're 4-0. The Kansas City Chiefs haven't been able to push the ball down the field in a lot of people's minds, even though they were against the Ravens, but their defense is so top-notch that they can play great defense and be efficient on third down and win the football game. Some teams like the Tampa Bay Buccaneers will run the ball down your throat and kill you in the red zone. There are different styles that win in the NFL. So don't sit here and tell me that a team has to look a certain way. There are different things that you have to do well in the NFL to win, but you don't have to look like everybody else. Your identity is your identity. Play the style of football that you play. Don't turn the ball over, be great in the red zone, and you'll be a contender in my estimation. All right, when we come back from the break, I'm going to tell you why one position, which is not on the field, may be the second most important position on the field, and it's underrated. Back with the final segment of the show right after this. And welcome back to Move the Chains. It's now time for the final segment of the show. It's time for the final drive. Backup quarterbacks in the NFL are underrated. You do not see teams perform well typically when their star quarterback or their starting quarterback is out, unless you're the San Francisco 49ers and Mac Jones. Again, I'm going to reiterate this. If quarterback is the most important position on the field, why is the man right behind him not the second most important position? Because he doesn't play, but when he does play, most teams are not in a position to win, and that's the problem. All right, don't forget, you can not only catch us right here on the Sports Leader WXTX Fox 54, but you can also catch us on YouTube. Make sure you subscribe to the channel that you see on the screen. It's @move_the_chains. Make sure you like, subscribe to the channel, leave a comment, and hit that notification bell so you can be notified when we post more videos. Hey, another banger. For the best production crew in the business, I'm your boy, Jonathan Bam Rivers, and always remember, build every day of your life brick by brick. And scan that QR code at the bottom and call Robert if you want to be a better financial situation, mental, physical, and spiritual situation. And as always, right here on Move the Chains, until next time, God bless.